Throughout our lives, we've learned that people who don't pay their bills will hear from debt collectors, who may harass us and sue us until they get what they think they have coming to them. Seniors have different rights when it comes to debt collectors, but those rights won't help you if you don't know them. Attorney Eric Olsen is the founder of the Helps Law Group, which helps struggling seniors and others in debt. Eric enjoys informing seniors and others of their rights when it comes to dealing with debt collectors. In this exclusive interview, Eric will explain why seniors shouldn't worry about debt collectors, the laws they have to follow, how to easily stop debt collector harassment, how your income and bank account are both protected, why you don't have to worry about getting sued, even if you lose, how to handle medical debt, student loan debt, and state and federal tax debt, and how Eric's law firm, the Helps Law Group, can help you. Because Eric is in New Orleans and I'm in Los Angeles, we'll be conducting the interview via Zoom. Hi, everyone. It's Jeff Hoyt, editor-in-chief of SeniorLiving.Org. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Eric Olsen. Eric is an attorney and the founder of the Helps Law Group, which helps seniors and others who are struggling with debt. Welcome, Eric.
Glad to be here with you, Jeff.
Well, today we're going to discuss something that's right up your alley, debt and seniors. So how big a problem is debt for seniors these days?
It's a big problem. Millions of seniors have medical debt, have credit card debt. The Kaiser Family Foundation did a survey a few years ago, and under supplemental poverty measures, determined that almost a little over 40% of seniors have incomes within 200% of the poverty line. That's considered to be financially at risk. So it's like at least 25 million seniors are in that. Seniors are over age of 65. And the older they get, the more there are that fall into that category.
Wow, that's a lot. So if
Yeah,
someone doesn't pay their credit card bill, like a debt collector is going to hound them. So is there a way to stop a debt collector from hounding people?
there is. There is a law called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. That law was passed in 1978, the year I graduated from law school, a long time ago. And that law provides, amongst other things, it tells debt collectors what they can and cannot do in trying to collect a debt, and provides that, if you want to contest a debt, you can ask the creditor to, if the debt is legitimate, it's called debt validation, and they have 30 days to give you information regarding the debt being valid. Now, that doesn't prevent them from still suing you within that 30 days, but the law doesn't prevent that. But they have to give you information about the debt being valid. There are occasionally some errors in debt collection. Now, if you ask for them to validate the debt and they don't do it, then it could be a scammer. But, they're supposed to follow the law, but a lot of them don't.
So it could be that it's for a debt that you never incurred or a debt that you already paid and you're still getting calls from debt collectors?
That does happen. Okay. It could be a debt that, an interesting thing is that, there's a statute of limitations and all states have a certain amount of time when a creditor can sue you or a collector can sue you for a debt. And normally it's from the date that the debt was incurred or from when you last made a payment. It could be 3 years, 5 years, 6 years. Normally that's it. 5 years is pretty typical. But interestingly enough, if it's beyond the statute of limitations, legally they cannot sue you, okay? But they could still call you about the debt. I've talked to people recently. I talked to some widow who was being called about a debt that she had incurred 18 years ago. And she said, "Why are you calling me?" And she said, "Well, because we can." And she's right. They legally could call her about the debt. Now, they couldn't sue her. And I've had people tell me that they've gotten calls from creditors that collectors and saying, "Well, we can't sue you, but we'd like you to make arrangements to pay this debt." So it's not common, but it can happen that they call you and try to collect a debt beyond the statute of limitations. It's not illegal for them to do that. They can't sue you. They can still try to collect from you.
So even if it's a legitimate debt, is there something you can do to get these debt collectors to stop calling you?
Absolutely. Part of that law that was passed in 1978 provides that if you send a debt collector what's called a cease and desist letter, that's a letter telling the debt collector you no longer want to receive telephone calls or mail regarding the collection of debt. Legally, a debt collector can no longer call you or send demand letters anymore. They have to leave you alone. Now, they can still sue you, but they cannot call or send you demand letters. They have to leave you alone. The law also provides that if you're represented by an attorney, then debt collectors have to communicate with the attorney, not you. That's what HELPS does. We represent seniors who are debt, so the collectors can't bother them anymore. They give us their creditors. We send them a cease and desist letter, and they leave them alone. But you know, a person could do it on their own. We have forms on our website, or you can Google it or search for a cease and desist letter, and you can find a template and send it. Yeah, if you send a cease and desist letter to a debt collector, they have to leave you alone. Now, you got to be careful. You know, it doesn't apply to an original creditor. An original creditor, it doesn't apply to. There's a few exceptions. There's, I believe, 7 states that have taken the federal law and applies it to state law and says you can send a cease and desist letter to an original creditor and they can't call or send demand letters anymore. They have to leave you alone. And if they violate the law, they can be sued. There's like $1,000 penalty plus attorney fees if you have an attorney represent you. So because of that, legitimate debt collectors, if they get a cease and desist letter, they're normally going to leave you alone.
So let me just see if I can summarize. If you're being harassed by a debt collector, phone calls, letters, whatever, you can either say, I'm represented by an attorney, and then they have to reach out to the attorney. You can have an attorney send them a cease and desist letter, or you can take a copy from your website or other places on the internet and send them a cease and desist letter yourself. And any one of these should stop a legitimate debt collector from contacting you.
That is correct.
But they could still sue you in many cases.
They could still sue you.
Okay. So if I get sued by my credit card company, let's say for non-payment of a bill, and I don't show up in court or don't fight it or I lose, they get a judgment against me, they could garnish my wages. Every paycheck, they're going to grab something. There's nothing I can do about that. Right?
That's correct. And
So,
there's exception in some states don't allow garnishment of wages, like Texas, but almost all states, yeah, they could garnish your wages.
right. So if you're a retired senior, how is it different?
If you're a retired senior getting Social Security, okay, or you're getting a pension, or you might be getting VA benefits. So Social Security, since its inception in 1935, has been protected from garnishment. Debt collectors, if they sue you and get a judgment, they can't touch your Social Security. And then in 1974, there was a law passed called the ERISA, Employment Retirement Income Security Act. And that provides that a debt collector can't garnish your pension. Now, if you might have a pension that's not covered in that federal law, and in that case, there'll be a state law that protects it. In 46 years of practice, I've never seen anyone have their pension garnished. Okay, so yeah, your retirement income is protected. Your VA benefits, 401k, IRA, virtually any form of retirement income is going to be protected from a debt collector trying to garnish that income.
Well, that's good to know. So if there is a legitimate debt that you've run up and you're being sued for it, should you go to court and defend yourself? Should you hire a lawyer, spend more money that you don't have? Or,
Well, if you owe the debt, if you're, there's probably no need to go to court. If you owe the debt, you're going to lose, right? And a lot of seniors that owe debt are seniors that have lower incomes. If a senior has money, they're going to make arrangements to pay it. But if they don't need to pay it, because if a creditor were to sue them and get a judgment, okay, they can't touch their Social Security, they can't touch their pension, their income is protected. The other thing the senior needs to remember, and this is important, since 2012, there's a federal rule put into place that tells banks that they have to protect twice the amount of federal benefit that a person gets deposited into a bank account from garnishment in the event of a judgment, regardless of what money is in the bank account at the time of the garnishment. So if a senior got $1,500 in Social Security each month, that means $3,000 in their bank account is protected from garnishment, no matter what other monies are happen to be in that account. Now, if they happen to have more money than that in there, it was from a protected source like a Social Security or a pension, it's still protected, not automatically. They could file like a claim of exemption or challenge the garnishment. There's forms they could file to have that money released to them. But most seniors I talk to, they don't have a problem with keeping their bank account less than twice the amount of federal benefits they get each month.
So, in your example of $1,500 a month in Social Security, a retiree who had $3,000 in the bank, that money could not be touched, as even if the money was $1,000 of it was a gift from the kids and $500 of it was selling their coin collection or whatever it is, that money is safe.
Exactly right. What's interesting, Jeff, is that I've yet to meet a bank manager that understands that rule. Hey, so if you go to ask your bank manager, he's not going to know the answer. He's going to give you wrong information. And I would guess that 999 out of 1,000 attorneys don't know that rule. It's been in effect since 2012, but the word is getting out slowly. But I can assure you that there's a department in the bank that deals with garnishments, and they understand that rule, and they're going to protect those funds. So seniors don't need to worry about losing their money as long as they keep it less than twice the amount of their federal benefit in their bank account. Now, they don't even need to worry about it at all unless someone sues them and they get a judgment against them.
Well, that's very reassuring. Now, what about seniors who own property? Could someone put a lien on their house or take their car away from them if they have a judgment against them?
States have different laws that protect certain amounts of equity or an interest you have in property. For example, so much equity in a home, so much equity in a car. Many states have what's called a wild card exemption, which means if it's not listed specifically, then a certain amount is protected. But let's say for a home, for example, typically if someone were to sue you and get a judgment, in most states, a judgment would become a lien on the interest you have in real property, which means land, like a house on dirt, okay, in the county where the judgment is located, okay? And the amount of the exemption depends on state. It could be 25,000, could be 50,000, could be 200,000, could be in California, probably 700,000. It depends on your state. That's the amount of equity you have in a home. But interestingly enough, if you have more equity than the exemption for your state, it is not the practice of consumer judgment creditors that sue someone and get a judgment. If you have equity more than the state allows, it's not their practice to ever take a person's home. They just simply don't do it. Okay. And then if you own the home, for example, with a spouse and you passed away and the debt was against you, then if you own the home jointly with your spouse, the home would automatically transfer to your spouse. The judgment disappears because it's only a lien on property you own. And if you die and you no longer own that property because it transfers by operation of law to the survivor, then the judgment doesn't mean anything. So seniors who get judgments that have a home don't need to worry about their home being taken. And the same thing with cars. I've been an attorney now, 46 years, probably filed 30 or 40,000 bankruptcies before I started helps. It is simply not the practice of consumer judgment creditors to go after property other than try to maybe garnish a bank account, which is protected as we explained. So even if you have a car with some equity over and above the exemption for your state, they're not going to go after it.
Right. So even if they are allowed to call you and ask for the money, a lot of times they can't collect on the money. So seniors should be reassured by that.
They absolutely should. Debt collectors, they don't have to tell you what your rights are, and they don't. About the only thing they need to tell you is we're a debt collector, and any information we get can be used for that purpose. They don't have to tell a senior that their income is protected, and they won't. Their job is to try to collect the debt. So they operate on a senior's lack of knowledge to try to collect debt and intimidate them and scare them into thinking that they need to pay the debt. That's one reason they file a lawsuit. Even though they may realize, hey, if the senior knew their rights, they knew that they would know that they're not going to have to pay us. Even if we sue and get a judgment, they're still going to sue because they're hoping you'll pick up the phone and call and make arrangements, or that you're going to be scared that you're going to lose some property and you're going to need to pay them.
Well, debt collectors may not tell seniors their rights, but I'm glad you are.
That's right.
This should help lots of seniors. So what other do's and don'ts are there for dealing with debt collectors?
I guess one thing is you don't necessarily need to talk to them if you don't want to. Okay. If you're a senior and you know your income's protected, the debt collectors, their whole job is to try to get you to pay. A lot of them get paid a commission. Okay. And they use intimidation tactics, and they're really good at getting, intimidating people and scaring you. You don't need to communicate with them if you don't want to. You don't have to talk to them.
And what if they say, well, just send us $1 to show you have good faith?
Well, that wouldn't be a good idea because, like I said earlier, maybe the statute of limitations is going to run in a month. If you send them $1, then the statute of limitations very likely is going to start up again. So you don't want to pay them. If the statute of limitations, although, I say this, if your income is protected, it really doesn't matter if you are sued. They can't collect from you. You're judgment proof. You're going to be okay.
But it's still scary to be sued.
It is. It is scary. No one wants to have someone knock on their door and serve with legal papers, especially if it's never happened before. But I guess that's what I'm here for, to reassure seniors they're going to be okay. When one of our clients gets sued, we ask them to get us a copy of the lawsuit. We usually only need the first 2 or 3 pages. And we send a letter to the attorney that sued our client and let them know, hey, this senior's income is Social Security and a pension is protected. They need the money for their food and medicine. They can't afford to pay you, and they're not going to pay you. And we understand you're going to get a judgment. Don't touch their bank account. We tell them that, but they can't anyway, but we tell them that anyway. And then we call our client to tell them they don't need to worry. The whole purpose of HELPS is to let seniors know that they don't need to worry, and they can always call and talk to us, and they do.
And in talking to debt collectors, should they admit that the debt is theirs, even if they're protected, or is it better just to not give them any information?
It really doesn't matter if they admit or not. They can't really do anything. I worry about a senior talking with a debt collector. Now, if you want to pay the debt and you want to work it out and you want to pay it, that's fine. You can talk to them. And if you realize what your rights are, you can pay them whatever you want. If you choose to, you don't have to. Okay. A lot of the seniors we help they're lower income or modest income, and they don't have any extra money. They need it for food or medicine. Or needful things in their life. Like one old man told me years ago, he said, I can buy my grandson a present. And I said, yeah, absolutely you can. So, you don't need to pay the debt if you can't afford to.
Good to know. Now, what about medical debt? Does this apply to that as well?
Oh, good question. Yes, it is. It applies to medical debt. Any debt collector. I tell our clients, if they have medical debt, if it's your own doctor, we don't want to send them one of those cease and desist letters, because that's kind of like rubbing salt in a wound. Say, pay them what you can, $25, whatever you can. They're mostly getting paid through Medicare, okay? And they know that you're struggling. And if you pay them a little bit of something, they're going to be happy, even if you have a balance, okay? But as far as your hospital is concerned, if it's a nonprofit hospital, which most are, they can't deny you services. Or if it's a doctor you're never going to see again, or if it got turned over to a collection agency, yeah, you can send a cease and desist letter on a medical debt. We do it all the time.
And what about student loans?
Student loans has a history, and it's been in a state of flux. The administration around May 5th was going to announce that they were going to start offsetting 15% of Social Security for past due student loans. Well, that lasted for about 2 weeks, and then they backtracked, and around the first part of June, they said, we're not going to do that. We're going to put that on hold, which is a pretty good idea, because a lot of seniors that owe student loans are lower income or poor, and 15% of $1,000 in Social Security income you're getting, that's a huge chunk. And normally a senior could get on an income-based repayment plan for student loans in the past, but that process is pretty difficult and complicated. And I think until lawmakers or the education department streamlines the procedure and makes it easier, hopefully that won't start up here for a while. But right now, there's no plans for them to offset 15% of Social Security for student loans. They would never they don't take your pension. They wouldn't sue you. They would just automatically offset 15% of Social Security. And they wouldn't do that earlier until they gave you a notice of like 60 days before they're going to do that. But right now, they're not doing that. So a senior that owes student loans can't afford to pay it. They don't need to worry about it right now.
Good to know. What about taxes?
Currently not collectible status. If you're a senior and your only income is Social Security, you likely could qualify for what's currently not collectible status with the IRS. Approximately, if you're single, $2,500 or less in income. If you're married, $3,500 or less in income, and more in some states. Some states it's more expensive. There's higher costs, but you can contact the IRS and apply for currently not collectible status. The lower your income, the easier it is to get on currently not collectible status, and the closer you are to the poverty level. And you can often just do it over the phone. Look at the number on the upper right-hand corner, call that number. You might be on hold for an hour and a half and go over your income with the IRS agent, and they're courteous, and they can put you on currently not collectible status over the phone. Now, if you have a higher income, you might need to fill out a form to get that done. But one thing I should add is if you owe state taxes, Jeff, a state tax collector cannot take your Social Security or your pension. That money is protected, just like it's protected from a credit card. The state cannot garnish your Social Security or your pension. They can't take that money, and it's also protected in your bank account from a state tax collector.
I was just about to ask about state taxes, so thank you for that. So, do you mind just summing up when seniors have to deal with debt collectors, like basically why they shouldn't worry about them?
Number one reason is their income is protected. No one can touch their Social Security. No one can touch your pension. You certainly, I encourage seniors to pay their debt if they can, but if you can't, if you're struggling, you don't have to. The Congress passed laws and legislators passed laws to protect seniors because they understood that seniors needed this money. They didn't want seniors going without basic needs. They wanted to have enough money for their food and their medicine and these needs. And in addition, they passed laws that tell collectors that they can't call or send you demand letters anymore. And then they protected your money in your bank account. Okay. And then there's state laws that protect your assets. So seniors have lots of protections. And unfortunately, there's a lack of information on the internet about this. There's a lot of companies that help people collect debts, but many of them will never tell a senior, by the way, you really don't need our help because your income is protected. I talk to seniors every day, Jeff, that are signed up with debt management companies, some nonprofit ones even, and debt settlement companies. They're making payments that they don't need to make. And sometimes they're put into utter poverty, making a payment on old debt that they can't afford to pay. And they were never told, by the way, you really don't need our help because all your income is protected. They can't do anything to you.
Well, I'm glad we're getting this message out. And if a senior wants helps on their side to represent them, how would they go about doing that?
We're all over the internet. www.helpsushere.org, 855 helps us or helps us. They can just search us on the internet. We're everywhere.
And do you charge typical attorney prices?
No, we never turn anyone away that needs our help. The cost for those that pay is absolutely minimal and usually lasts for maybe 4 years. And, that might be as little as $20 for 24 months, $10 for 24 months, free thereafter. And the most a person would normally pay would be $40 for 24 months, $20 for 24 months, and free thereafter. But we don't, if someone can't afford us and they're lower income, we represent a lot of people for free. And we make it work for people. Okay. We don't want seniors to struggle or suffer. And as far as I know, we're the only law firm in the nation that does what we do. We help people in all 50 states.
And it's just nice to know that you're helping seniors spend their money on food and medicine instead of some old debt that they really don't have to pay.
They're really thankful to find us. Last week, I talked to a guy, and after I was talking to him, he says, I feel like I'm dreaming. He couldn't believe what I was telling him.
He owed debt and he was paying it and he didn't have to.
He had $900, a little bit over $900 in Social Security. He was paying $300 a month for his credit card debts. And I told him, you don't need to do that anymore. So you can imagine what he felt like.
Right. Yeah. A third of his money going out the door for something he doesn't have to pay, and now
He
he
didn't
can
have to
spend
pay.
it
I
on
mean, he
himself.
couldn't afford it. I mean, you can imagine living off of $600 a month. Man,
Thank you for getting the message out, and hopefully we helped a few seniors today. Thanks, Eric. Really
I hope so
appreciate it.
too. Thank you, Jeff.